Math was never our strong suit, but breaking down Ohio State football is. Sit back and join us for Buckeye Grove Instant Access, part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You can do it!
Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. Post-game thoughts, immediate analysis, and much, much more to put the big game into perspective. Without any further delay of game, here's your host, Kevin New.
Kevin, goddammit.
Welcome to the BIA podcast. On a tremendous day, the Big Ten is back, or at least a plan is in place. We don't have a schedule. We don't know all of the particulars, but what we do know is this 40-day, however long, national nightmare is a thing of the past. We learned this morning the Big Ten is back. We will have football, an October season, albeit just getting it in under the wire, not the 17th. Rather the 23rd, the 24th. But we will get to all of that as I welcome in our co-host, Griffin Strome, who has been instrumental in our coverage today over at Buckeye Grove. Griffin, welcome to the show. What a day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. It's the day has finally come. We've kind of been waiting for the last several days with bated breath here, waiting for this announcement. Was it ever going to come? Was it all just lies on the internet? No, it actually did happen. The announcement finally came. It actually came the minute I woke up. I rolled over and saw the news and immediately ran to my living room, turned on the Big Ten Network, and it's pretty much just been go ever since then, finding out all the details about this. We went right into like 2 straight hours, basically, of press conferences. Heard from Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren. We heard from new Ohio State President Christina Johnson, Gene Smith. We also got Ryan Day unexpectedly as well. So a lot of stuff going on today. Sean Way was just on SportsCenter. A ton of stuff to talk about.
Well, obviously, it sounds like you woke up about 10 minutes earlier than I did, because I woke up and this was already going on. And, of course, I'm like, what happened? So I'm running about 10 minutes behind you. But, yeah, I think that there was a lot of doubt creeping into the minds of people. This was supposed to be done on Sunday. This was supposed to be done on Monday. We get to the end of Monday. I seriously, I'm getting messages left and right from people. Oh man, you don't know what you're talking about. This isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. Really felt that today was going to be the day, but I could say that the other 2 days. But I thought at least, with Big Ten offices being in the Central Time Zone, half the membership being in the Central Time Zone, I was going to be okay making it to like 9:15, 9:30 and not miss anything. And lo and behold, they went with it early.
Yeah, and last night we were even I was waiting up. My eyes were starting to shut. I was just refreshing Twitter. I was over on like Pete Thamel's Twitter page because he's got the latest updates a lot of the time. Just waiting to see if this news was going to drop. And it's just been on Sunday we thought it was going to happen. On Monday we were sure it was going to happen. On Tuesday it was going to happen again. It did not happen. But today at least we didn't have to wait all day today. It was it was right at the top of the morning. With the official announcements, and man, I'm just happy that the day has finally come. I know last time we were on here, that was kind of the first speculation of the first kind of preliminary reports that we were hearing that a vote might come that weekend. What was this last Friday or something like that we got on?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
and nothing ever materialized. But the day's finally come, and I'm glad to see it here.
I mean, we can get into the brass tacks here in a second. And honestly, when we're getting into, 5% versus 7.5% of population counts and so on, a little bit above my pay grade. I mean, what we do know is a season that's starting October 23rd, 24th. It's going to be 8 games plus 1, and it's going to be kind of a unique plus 1 situation. 8 games over 8 weeks, and then you're going to have your Big Ten championship game. But then it's just not going to be a situation where your divisional winners are going to be facing off, if you want to kind of follow on with that.
And that was what we had been hearing, was that, it was going to be October 17th. 8 games, maybe a bye week, and then a Big Ten championship game. But that's not the case. Barry Alvarez, who was kind of in charge of one of the committees dealing with the scheduling, when he was on the Big Ten Network today with all the other administrators, he said that they're going to have a unique kind of championship week where the last week, so everyone will play 9 games. It won't be a case where only the champions will play that extra game. Every team will play 9 games, but they'll match the teams up with their mirror seed in the other division. So the championship game would come from the number 1 in the East and number 1 in the West, obviously playing. But then after that, you get the 2 and the 2, the 3 and the 3, the 4 and the 4, which is pretty cool. We haven't seen anything like that before. I will say one thing that will make that a little bit interesting or could change that format a bit was that I know Alvarez was asked if they would switch those matchups up if the teams had already played, let's say the 3 versus the 3, if that matchup had already played, if they might look at switching those around. Obviously, that's not quite as important into factoring into the actual playoff picture, considering the 1 versus 1 will probably take place regardless. But that was an interesting change in format. There were some unexpected little twists in there because I had obviously pre-written a lot of stuff, expecting certain things to play out, and so those were some interesting tweaks in there that I hadn't heard anyone report previously.
Right, and there'll be a day and a time where I'll be able to maybe share a little bit more of things that I heard along the way. We're still too close to the situation, but we heard various situations. I mean, a couple weeks ago, it was going to be about October 10th, and then it was like the 17th, and then the 24th came in, but everything seemed to settle back on the 17th. So, it really sounds as if it was always something in flux. But something I like about this championship week is there is the potential that the Big Ten will be the only game in town that weekend, because other championship games are scheduled to go on the 12th, and they have the 19th open just in case a delay is forced or something along those lines. But there's a very real chance that could be a showcase week for the Big Ten.
Right, and a chance to kind of leave that last impression in the mind of the selection committee. Is that what you're getting at there?
Well, not even so much that. I just think it's something for a conference that's taken on so much water over the last 40 some days, probably a little bit longer than that. Let's just stretch it out to 2 months. It's a way to leave at least a better taste in the mouths of a lot of people, as you saw the Big Ten, the first one to head to high water or to high ground when the water started to rise. And now they're back, and they could have a week where, nobody's going to really care about that, Rutgers, Illinois game or whatever the 7-7 game is going to be. But I think it still could be something good for the conference. I don't think it's going to create any goodwill or make anybody forget. But, you're always looking when you're trying to recoup television dollars, when you're playing a shortened season and certainly a delayed season, to be able to have that spotlight week where ABC is going to want all of the inventory it can get, because the championship game would still be on Fox. I think it's a nice little carrot.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Were you surprised at all to see that they're not getting a bye week? In that schedule, it's a 9-game, 9-week thing. Were you surprised by that?
I am, because you're really limiting yourself in terms of flexibility. And, as we kind of get into a little bit more of the brass tacks, I mean, we're not seeing a positive test is not 14 days out. It's 21. They want 14 days for the CDC regulations in terms of a positive test, plus an observation period and ramp back up to competition for the myocarditis, the heart ailment that's been associated maybe with this whole situation. So, I mean, you certainly do run the risk of having, if an outbreak happens on a team and you get to a point of where, what is it, 5% of the team has positive tests, you're shut down for 7 days. Not a lot of flexibility. It certainly would have been easier to play 10 games over 16 weeks or 12 games over 16 weeks. Alas, we're in the situation that we're at.
Yeah, and that's what kind of surprised me, that Gene Smith said he's not that concerned about that. about the lack of flexibility because it seems very concerning, honestly, with everything going on in the 21-day period now. And it's just kind of funny to kind of juxtapose his comments today, saying he's not as concerned with that, with what he said when the Big Ten originally announced their schedule. Really, when the Big Ten initially nixed the non-conference games, if you recall, Gene Smith was all about, oh, they have all this flexibility. Now we've got all this flexibility. That was like his big buzzword that day was like, oh, we have all this flexibility now. And fast forward, to today, and he's not concerned about the lack of flexibility. And he was kind of saying, obviously he used to be on the CFP selection committee. He was kind of saying, the CFP is going to have to, realize that there's going to be inconsistencies in the number of games that are going to be played across conferences, and maybe even teams in the same conference, depending on what shakes down with outbreaks and everything. But I think honestly the changes in the testing is what is making a lot of people in the Big Ten a little bit more a little more confident in the fact that there might not be those issues, because they will be able to know it won't be a situation where someone might have COVID and not be tested for a few days, which before it was what, like 3 times a week they were getting tested.
Yeah.
And now it's an every day, and you can't go to practice unless you know that you don't have it, and stuff like that. So I think there's just a lot more. There's a lot of confidence in the fact that the virus won't be spread as much with the new procedures, basically.
Right, and we're also talking about the antigen tests, and not so much the old tests that were wildly inconsistent, and it's a much smaller margin for error on these. Dr. Christina Johnson, university president for the Ohio State University, was talking about it, but then she kind of started talking about numbers, and then I felt like I was in that scene from The Hangover where Zach Galifianakis is seeing all the geometry going in front of him, and I think I started playing with my phone at that point. So I'm not going to purport to be an expert on any of that, but I want to play a little bit of sound. Our friends over at the Chuck Oliver Show had the opportunity to talk to SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey today about the news. I mean, it wasn't the crux of the entire interview, about the Big Ten being back. And I just want to play the sound. We'll listen to it, and then we'll talk about it.
Well, I've been busy working on SEC issues over the last months, weeks, days, and hours this morning. So I have seen they've made an announcement of a plan to actually play football this fall, which is different from that August 11th moment. I look forward to understanding a bit more. But good for the student athletes in the Big Ten. I've seen parental activity seeking the opportunity, so I wish them well in their endeavor.
I wish them well in their endeavor. What a nothing burger that is, huh? I mean, when they reached out to me to send me that audio and I listened to it, I'm like, really? And they said, I know, right? So, your thoughts, Griffin?
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems strangely subdued and kind of, nonchalant, or like it doesn't matter to him that much, or he's trying to make it seem that way. I don't know. Do you have more of an expanded thought on it?
I do, because I think the SEC was in a great position to get 2 teams in the college football playoff.
Right.
I mean,
right.
even under normal circumstances, it's always talked about. I mean, they certainly have a good PR agency about all of that. But now that the Big Ten enters the arena, and we don't know anything about the Pac-12, and we can talk about that a little bit after the break. That the Big Ten likely will take one of the spots, and then with the ACC, as long as Clemson, or I guess by extension you could maybe say Notre Dame, if they're able to get past Clemson, and so on and so forth, and then the Big 12. I mean, you could have the 4 leagues each getting a spot. So I don't think that people in the SEC were actively rooting against the conference. But, you sit there and you're like, well, this could be a great opportunity. We get Alabama and Georgia in, or we get Alabama and LSU in, or whatever it may be. I'm not sold on like LSU this year, but we can talk about that when we actually get to talk about football in the coming weeks here on the BIA podcast. But, that's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah, I know like at College Game Day last week I was watching, and there were people with like free Justin Fields signs and whatnot, and obviously these weren't Big Ten teams that the fans represented there. So I don't know, was that could be an indication that some of those fans do want to see the competitive nature with the Big Ten, the chance for their team to play a Big Ten team, or if that was more like a Justin Fields come transfer to our team in some type of fantasy world that wouldn't actually happen. But I don't know. I feel like and obviously this isn't an SEC player, but the Trevor Lawrences of the world are probably happy to see, the Big Ten teams come back into the fold and the chance to go up against Fields again potentially. But yeah, no, I definitely understand the point about the fact that the SEC could have definitely had two teams in the playoff. And now without the Pac-12, it does feel pretty good if you're an Ohio State proponent, kind of evaluating your chances at making the playoff, because it seems like a very direct line. You just win the conference and you're in without that the variable of being the team that wins their conference championship and gets left behind. Not that that's typically been the case with the Big Ten, with the Pac-12 kind of being a team that's been left out in recent years. But now it kind of seems even clearer, even with all the variables that could potentially derail things.
Well, we'll talk about some more of the football ramifications and a little bit more about this tremendous news that came out today here on Wednesday. The Big Ten is back. As I said earlier in the show, we don't know a schedule per se, but I'm going to take a good guess at one based on some things that I've read and some things that I think that I know. Griffin and I will be back on the other side of this quick break. Egg Water Conditioning has been treating well in city water in Central Ohio with American-made water filtration products for over 60 years. Have a water quality problem? The water treatment experts at Hague know how to solve it. Not sure if your water softener is working? They will test, inspect, and sanitize any brand of water softener for only $20. Schedule a system checkup or water test today by calling 614-836-2195 or visit them online at HagueH2O.com. That's HAGUE H2O.com. Welcome back to the BIA podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Noon, joined by Griffin Strom, and we're talking here on the day that the Big Ten rose from the dead, and we are now back to October football. Not January, not November, but October football. And we're getting ready for Schedule 3.0. Schedule 1.0 was the old 12-game schedule that we knew for forever and ever. And then that got tabled when the Big Ten made the announcement, first conference to come out and say that we're going to league-only games. And then the Big Ten was the last conference to release its schedule, and that's Schedule 2.0, for the sake of our discussion here, lasted 6 days. And then it was tabled when the Big Ten decided that it wasn't going to play. And now we're getting ready for Schedule 3.0. So we went from a 12-game schedule to a 10-game schedule to an 8+1. And the +1 we're not going to know until the end of the season. There's no pre-planning or any of that. You're just going to have to watch crossover film and have an idea of what everybody else is doing. But we know that they're going to be 8 league games. So we've gone from 9 league games to 10 league games, now down to 8 league games. What we know, or what we think we know, is Purdue's AD said during a press conference today that the schedule in terms of league games would be pulled from Schedule 1.0. So for Ohio State's purposes, that means that added game against Purdue at Purdue is off. That won't happen. So now we're down to 3 games, because you're going to play your 6 divisional mates, because we're still playing a divisional structure, obviously. So the 6 games, Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, and Indiana are, that they're there. But then, you have 3 other games that were on the schedule that they're going to draw from. You're going to have a game at Illinois, and then there are home games against Nebraska and Iowa. Now, there's nothing that says that they couldn't flip games around as long as they make the geometry work. So just because they're supposed to go to Champaign doesn't mean that they have to go to Champaign. But I think they will. So I think we can say that that's going to be the safe game on the schedule. So now we have Nebraska and Iowa each coming to Columbus. And I don't know about you, but the thought of the two teams that fought the hardest, apologies to Iowa. I mean, Iowa was a yes as well. Iowa was a yes. When there was 11-3, it was Ohio State, Nebraska, and Iowa. But if I'm a television programmer, if I'm trying to sit there and do something with this season, the thought of Nebraska and Ohio State maybe opening the season, playing each other in game one, that's that's pretty exciting to me. I don't know about you, but that's the direction I'm going. And then I got a couple of other little tidbits that I'll throw in, but let's kind of talk about how we think the schedule could shape up.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be very cool. I mean, obviously you had the 8 Nebraska players, file that lawsuit against the Big Ten, which did yield some information. It got the official vote count that everyone was kind of clamoring after. It got that information out into the public. Nebraska President Ted Carter, that's been an interesting story to follow as well. And he's been pretty transparent with information about when things are going to be happening, even if they didn't always materialize when he thought they were going to. But yeah, Nebraska has definitely won a lot of people over that might have been neutral towards them before, in terms of just the the willingness to fight for the season, and pitting them up against Ohio State. Even though even the 2.0 schedule, who did Ohio State start with in that version? I need to pull
in the 2.0 schedule was the.
It was still Rutgers.
It was at Illinois. It was at Illinois because they were going to play. They were going to play on a Thursday. They were going to play on September 3rd.
Right. And yeah, and see, I just feel like they still, there's the college football kind of model where some of these, the best teams start up, with these warm-up games. Even with everything, all the variables going on, I still feel like they might start. Not that Nebraska is a powerhouse or anything like that. I just kind of feel like Ohio State's still going to start with, kind of a lesser Big Ten opponent. That would be my instinct. Just in the fact that they even talked about with the 2.0 schedule about how they would front load the schedule with the divisional rivalry games and whatnot, and that didn't really materialize in the same way that people thought it might, which just leads me to believe that the scheduling still kind of favors an Ohio State matching up with one of those lesser, East divisional matchups to start the year. But who knows? Anything, things are obviously changing every day, and things are not, going according to the template that has existed previously. So we shall see.
Yeah, absolutely. So and I don't have any insight on that, and it certainly does make sense, but. And we look at the SEC schedule. We look at week 1 where they're playing league only, and it's kind of a snooze fest largely. You're certainly not getting Georgia, Florida, or anything like that week 1, or obviously Auburn, Alabama, a game that generally goes at the end of the season. But something that I have learned is on version 2.0, Ohio State, Michigan was not the last game of the season. But I'm hearing that for version 3.0, Ohio State, Michigan will be the last game of the season, of the regular season, meaning December 12th. Now, again, that's all subject to change, but that sounds like a Fox game, Gus and Joel on the call, and I think that the traditional fan is going to be thrilled. I mean, yes, it's not Thanksgiving weekend or anything, but I just think that everybody wants to be able to build up to that. And then an additional caveat, just based on the way that the schedules kind of work out in terms of the two television partners, with that being a Fox game, I would expect the Ohio State-Penn State game to be an ABC ESPN game. But with no fans on the stands, and we haven't really talked about that one yet, there's not necessarily going to be a whiteout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like moving the Michigan game back again, just that speaks to the fact that before, they had this plan where they had like the 3 open weeks and whatnot, like in case something happens, we can move stuff around. Now, again, like we said, they can't move stuff around really because of the 9-week schedule that ends right before the college football playoff selection. They can't move anything around anyway, really. So like, why not just, put it back, in kind of the slot that it's typically in, even though it's going to be pushed back, obviously. And it just speaks to kind of like the the confidence as well, again, in the new testing system, where I think they're confident that, not too much is going to have to get canceled. And yeah, I just think all of that plays into putting that Michigan game back in the final regular season slot.
And then, of course, everything sets up for the 19th being the last game, and then the selection committee goes on the 20th. So, that certainly puts the Big Ten very much, and I know we kind of talked about the playoff, but I know a lot of people want to talk about the playoff. So, I mean, I definitely think that it is a position of where players are getting the meaningful season that they want, which allows me to kind of dovetail into Shaun Wade and Wyatt Davis. Both of them had opted out. We had the opportunity to hear Shaun Wade on SportsCenter this afternoon basically say it's his birthday. That was about the long and the short of it. And I get it. The poor kid's getting his phone blown up right now. I guarantee you Kerry Combs is respecting his space, yet being like, so what's up, man? So what are your thoughts on that opportunity? I mean, not only just, for Ohio State, but you look at programs like, Penn State, where Micah Parsons opted out, and some, Rondale Moore at Purdue and guys like that. Could we see a wave of opt-ins for guys that maybe aren't too far down the rabbit hole? We know neither of Ohio State's players are.
Yeah, and I think that's what was so part of what was so frustrating about the drawn-out decision-making process from the Big Ten, is because at least Wyatt Davis opted out, last Friday? And that was like right before, or right kind of as the speculation started to pick up about, a Sunday decision from the Big Ten. And he even told a podcast, I think, that he was going to wait to on anything official to see if a Sunday decision came out. And there wasn't a Sunday decision. So you're starting to think, man, like he might just, continue going in the direction he's going. And then on Monday morning, Shaun Wade opts out, and you're like, man, like now you're looking at it, the decision comes out on Wednesday, and you're looking back, and you're like, well, if they would have just announced this on Sunday, maybe, Shaun Wade doesn't make that decision, because it's got to be harder to return after you've already made that. You could have been, he might have been thinking about it this entire time, which I'm sure is part of why he was in Florida, But once you've already put out the statement to say you're declaring for the draft, I feel like it becomes harder to rescind that once you've already put it out there. And it's definitely still possible. I mean, compared to guys like Micah Parsons or Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore, those guys opted out so long ago. It was, it feels like Wyatt Davis and Shaun Wade were more bought in than they were, due to the fact that they were posting, "We want to play." And I feel like they've been bought in for the most part. And yet Gene Smith said that he's been talking to Wyatt Davis. He even answered a phone call briefly from Wyatt Davis, supposedly during our press conference today, which was very interesting to hear. He said he left Shaun Wade a message as well. The SportsCenter appearance was just very bizarre, in my opinion, because Randy Wade was on there, Shaun's dad, and then they just cut to Shaun really quick, and they're like, it felt like the SportsCenter anchor was kind of like expecting like a big decision like right there on the spot, and then it was just like, I haven't really thought about it yet, which isn't surprising. I mean, the decision just came out, but it'll be.
Go ahead.
And I mean, Shaun surprised me before. When he was, I mean, you might have had more of an inside scoop about this than I did at the time, but following the 2019 season, when he, had his little announcement in Jacksonville at his home to say that he was coming back. At the time, before that happened, I thought he was going to go pro. So, he has surprised me before. I feel like it would be a little bit of a surprise if he came back, but it's definitely a lot more possible than some of those other stars in the Big Ten.
You talk about how hard it is to go back on a statement, and that they both had put out their statements on social, and all the thank you for your hard work and everything there. But I take you back to a statement that came out from the Big Ten front office that they were not going to revisit this, and
right.
That they did. So you never know. But what I know, we're going to talk about this at length at least until October 23rd or 24th when Ohio State plays its first game of the season. Then maybe we'll be able to move on. But without having a lot of time to really kind of think it over and reflect, what are you going to remember most about this 40 days from hell?
Man, what I'll remember most probably is that it feels like a lot longer than a month and a month and a week or so. It feels like it just feels like so much time has passed since that August 11th date. And it's just crazy how many back and forths there have been with, public opinion on what was going to happen. And really honestly, just the kind of the conflicting reports, that have been out where, somebody's sources are saying one thing, then some other, credentialed person comes out with sources saying something completely different. And, who do you believe? Who's really got the scoop here? It's just been madness. But I think, at this point we're kind of back where we should have been all along, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on what I'm going to remember most. I'm going to forget the name Sir Yacht, but I am going to remember that there was some guy that on social media that just threw 100 grenades of information against a wall, hoping for one of them to stick. And I haven't gone back to see if he's claimed victory, that he was right with one of his shots. I mean, shoot or shoot. But, I'm going to remember that. And then I'm also going to remember this strange phenomenon of national people actively cheering on the Big Ten for shutting down while actively cheering on other leagues for playing. And then right toward the end, a couple of them had to change their tune to boo everybody. And then we had people out there saying that this was the darkest day in the history of the Big Ten, a conference that's really been in the news the last, 10 years for some pretty bad off-the-field situations, the Sandusky's and the Larry Nassars and, so on and so forth. The name of the Ohio State doc, Richard Strauss, the name was escaping me for a second. I really feel that some of the coverage of this entire event was disproportionate, dishonest, and disgusting.
But I will say, though.
Go ahead.
I will say, if you were waiting to see if Sir Yacht had claimed his victory, he in fact has a link to a series of shirts that say "Sir Yacht was right," currently pinned on his Twitter account. So he's doing a little more than just claiming the victory, I would say.
I'm all for capitalism, but oh my God, this kid's 15 minutes needs to end. But I think that sounds like a great stopping point. I want to thank Griffin for all of his hard work today and for joining me for more than a half hour here on the BIA podcast. And of course, we're going to have plenty more coverage of this event through the coming days. Hopefully a schedule release, a return to a practice plan for Ohio State. We didn't even really get into that. They should be getting to 20 hours really soon. And, we'll see where things go from there. So who knows, maybe here in a couple of days, we'll fire up the machine again and carry on with the schedule and some other finer points at that point.
Yes, sir.
But
can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either. But I want to thank Griffin for joining us, and I want to thank you for listening to us as we wrap up this BIA podcast. Be sure everybody joins us over at BuckeyeGrove.com. Now that football is back, we can't wait to have you. And let's play some ball. I'm ready for it. Once again, thanks a lot and enjoy.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game. Exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcasts Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.